they're going to try to lock us down again. We're seeing all of the signals. Are you seeing the signals that they're going to try this again and they're going to try to?
Well, yeah, they're floating it now. We just yesterday they're it's a pattern, right? So they fanned the news with a variant that we should be scared of. They've done that. Then celebrities and high profile people, quote unquote, get COVID. Jill Biden just got it yesterday, and they're trying to reintroduce mask mandates. And they've already purchased testing equipment. That's been Natalie Winters of the War Room found some purchase orders. So yeah, they're going to try it. It's not going to work.
Okay, it's not going to work. Well, I tend to agree with you. Kaiser Permanente tried to roll out a mask mandate across all of their hospital systems. It lasted about one day, and employees revolted. There are other instances where mask mandates were tried and they tried to implement them and people, fought back. And so I'm fascinated. I mean, you make predictions. So you typically, what's going to happen and you can see, but are you, I'm just kind of sitting back and just observing because I have no idea whether or not the American people are going to fall for this again. I really don't. My hunch is that they're not going to, and I like that you don't think they're going to because clearly,
I was in a local health food store this weekend with my friend. We were talking about it in the aisles. A young woman overheard us and said, "Are they going to bring back mandates?" I go, "That's the plan." And she said, "What are you going to do?" I go, "I'm not complying." She said, "Neither am I." So people know.
Yeah.
The globalist COVID tyrants are making their move again. But this time, the people of the world are awake and are standing up against it. The last 5 years of their criminal power grab has already blown up in their face. But they're so desperate, they have no other moves to make and are trying to run the same play again. This is going to be their Waterloo if we get the facts and raise the alarm to the people of the world now.
So many things can come out of this. I think the main points are we're ahead of any type of government narrative. This came out of a laboratory that all the evidence points to that. It's being spread by migratory waterfowl. What happens from here, John, is very interesting. The migratory waterfowl, don't forget, are not being culled. So they're flying around. What's going to happen is invariably they're going to get natural immunity, which is very interesting. So if they get natural immunity, this thing could die off on its own. The second point is that the human cases haven't been too impressive. And unless we actually start to get really serious pulmonary cases in humans, the public's not going to be moved by this.
It's Monday, December 30th, 2024. We're only 22 days out from the inauguration of President Trump, and right on time, as we predicted, and as the bad guys began admitting a month ago, they are rolling out the official bird flu hysteria. Now, here's the good news. People are way more aware and awake than they were 5 years ago, the last time they rolled out this global disease X and the UN's own admission as a plan to set up their corporate world government and their cashless society attached to the vaccine passport system for the social credit score. And just 2 weeks ago, they tried to pass the pandemic legislation in the big spending bill that mirrored the UN treaty that also failed this year to give them draconian powers for lockdowns, forced injections, forced masking, total liability protection for their poison shots. That failed. And they tried lockdowns last year, if you remember, but we got ahead of it, and Trump said they're doing this ahead of the election to try to steal it, so they're going to have mail-in ballots. There was major political, cultural pressure. They had to back off of that. But this time, they are coming in harder than ever. So if we expose the past fraud and the current fraud that I'm about to lay out, we don't have just a very good chance of stopping this huge psyop. We will stop it. But this is meant to block not just the American awakening of populism and the Great Awakening, but the global Great Awakening. And the usual suspects are out there pushing the lies. We're about to break it all down right now.
We have some big picture stuff coming down the pike starting on January 21st. Mr. Bloomberg mentioned H5N1. That I'm really worried about. It's all over wild birds on the western part of the United States and going up in the north. It's getting into the poultry.
You can see that they're monitoring more than 10,000 exposures, but they've only tested 530. What does that mean? That means we're not testing enough. And we know from other viruses that a lot of the spread can be asymptomatic.
And I think the Biden administration in the remaining days should get testing and vaccines widely available so that at least it empowers state and local health officials and clinicians to do the right thing for their patients.
All that's going to come crashing down on January 21st on the Trump administration. We need a really, really good team to be able to handle this.
Deborah Birx, Lena Wynn, Peter Hotez, all the usual suspects right out of Fauci's operation are all over television telling us this new bird flu is here. It could mutate any minute and just destroy us all. But don't you worry. The Biden administration over the last year has spent hundreds of millions of dollars going out to all these different so-called vaccine makers, including Moderna, with an mRNA experimental gene therapy. And a whole bunch of other foreign countries are developing mRNA for the bird flu, and that they're going to have it ready for you. And now we have Birx and Wynn and all the usual suspects saying we need emergency authorization from the FDA right now for these stockpiles of so-called vaccines they've made. There's more than 10 different companies that I just looked up this morning that are doing it, to then rush these directly untested to the public when the mainline science on its face shows that if you don't have the exact mutation of whatever they say the bird flu is going to mutate into, the shot doesn't just not protect you, but it causes what they call a leaky vaccine or accelerated evolution or mutation. When you give people these different experimental shots, supposedly suppressing those viruses, it then makes them mutate faster. And we've got scientists and experts and researchers and doctors coming on throughout the week to be talking about that on my show. But you can just look up leaky vaccines for yourself. It's kind of a non-threatening name. Oh, it's just a leaky vaccine. No, it means it makes new mutations that are worse, which is what they're warning us the bird flu is about to do. This new H5, N1 and all the rest of this. So any basic science, any basic research of this shows you how crazy it is. We're about to lay out some of the history of these fearmongers, what they're doing now and how we stop them.
My main concern is that we're not going to reach herd immunity because of vaccine hesitancy. And I know that's hard for a lot of people to believe who desperately want the vaccine right now. And they're thinking, oh, well, it's just a small percentage of people who are actually anti-vaxxers. And that's true. There is the anti-science, anti-vaxxer contingent. But I think that there are many more people, millions of people who, for whatever reason, have concerns about the vaccine, who just don't know what's in it for them. And we need to make it clear to them that the vaccine is the ticket back to pre-pandemic life. And the window to do that is really narrowing. I mean, you were mentioning, Chris, about how all these states are reopening. They're reopening at 100%. And we have a very narrow window to tie reopening policy to vaccination status. Because otherwise, if everything is reopened, then what's the carrot going to be? How are we going to incentivize people to actually get the vaccine? So that's why I think the CDC and the Biden administration needs to come out a lot bolder and say, if you're vaccinated, you can do all these things.
I knew these vaccines were not going to protect against infection, and I think we overplayed the vaccines.
So I am very worried that we just don't, we as a nation, we haven't made that commitment to really fully protect the American people.
We caught up with internationally recognized Dean of the National School of Tropical Medicine at Baylor and co-director of the Texas Children's Hospital Center for Vaccine Development, Dr. Peter Hotez, who's traveling to get his take on the topic.
We have a likelihood that new pandemic threats, that people call them disease X, are going to be rising on a regular basis.
And Dr. Hotez says Disease X, the next pandemic, could hit hard whenever it arrives. Why do you think some experts are predicting the next pandemic will make COVID-19 look like a walk in the park?
I've written about this as well. I wrote for the Houston Chronicle a couple of months back that COVID-19 is just the warm-up act. The next pandemic may not be as severe, but it could be much more severe.
You cannot make the conclusion that the vaccine will do better than natural infection, although it can often do slightly better.
But I think that's, I mean, you're an expert. You were on the task force. You were part of this effort when you were in the previous administration. And you're saying in this administration that you can't rule out the fact that our government was lying to us when they told us the vaccinated could not get the virus.
I don't know about their discussions that they had in the task force. So I can't tell you that. I can tell you as a family member who had individuals that were susceptible, of course we got everybody vaccinated, but we still used layered protection during surges because I knew potentially the vaccine immunity would wane like natural immunity waned. And there was evidence that every 4 months reinfection was occurring in South Africa.
Wow. When the government told us that the vaccinated couldn't transmit it, was that a lie or was that a guess? Or is it the same answer?
I think it was hope that the vaccine would work in that way. And that's why I think scientists and public health leaders always have to be at the table, being very clear what we know and what we don't know.
This is important for the country to know. So when I asked the question, when the government told us that the vaccinated couldn't get it, and I asked you if it was a guess or a lie, you said you don't know. You said you think it was hope. So what we do know is it wasn't the truth. So they were either guessing, lying, or hoping, and communicating that information to the citizens of this country.
I think they were hoping, but you should know in those original phase 3 trials that were done in this country that we only measured for symptomatic disease. So we weren't proactively testing everybody in those trials to see if they got infected with mild or asymptomatic disease. And so people had to present within the clinical trial. We never had the data that it was going to protect against asymptomatic infection.
I'm just struck with the irony. We got government agencies guessing, hoping, or lying with the information they're presenting to the American people, and this is the same administration that wants to set up the Disinformation Governance Board and wants to talk about misinformation. And they're the biggest purveyors of misinformation, false information, hopeful information, but not accurate and true information.
Don't forget, this point's got to be made over and over again. Just 2 weeks ago, they tried in the big spending bill to add draconian civil emergency, martial law provisions for a new pandemic and tens of billions of dollars more to fund their operations. That failed because the public is awake and because Trump supporters and Elon Musk and our listeners and others put pressure on them and shot down the legislation. The UN Global Treaty has failed. But they've come out and said, don't worry, a new pandemic's coming. Bill Gates, Hotez, all of them. And that will teach you to get in line and do what they say. What did Trump do last year when I raised the alarm and when this great audience of activists raised the alarm about them trying to roll out the Mpox, the new monkeypox, the bird flu, and the rest of it? We said we've got to get ahead of this and expose it. Trump came out and said they're doing this so they can have mail-in ballots coming up the election. We exposed it. It failed. So we attacked the PCR test. It's a fraud. Notice Birx was on national TV saying we've got to have the PCR test. We've got to create the fear. We've got to go out and test people and claim it's jumped to humans. It's preposterous how obvious all of this is. And that's why I've said they've got to go to prison, not just for the millions that died from the poison shot, and the millions that died around the world from lack of medical care, but so this same group of criminals can't do this again. The UN documents came out decades ago that they would use the threat of a pandemic to bring in world government and have it 6 feet apart and wearing masks and forced injections and quarantine centers. And they've built under UN auspices all these emergency pandemic camps around the world. This is their smokescreen for global totalitarianism to stop the global awakening. So we don't just call for saying no to this new hysteria and fear and stopping the new emergencies is declaring. We also demand prosecution of Fauci and the rest of them, and their whole house of cards will collapse. It's us or them.
We have some big picture stuff coming down the pike starting on January 21st. Mr. Bloomberg mentioned H5N1. That I'm really worried about. It's all over wild birds on the western part of the United States and going up in the north. It's getting into the poultry. We're seeing sporadic human cases, no human-to-human transmission yet, but that could happen. It's in the cattle, it's in the milk, and that's just the beginning. We have another major coronavirus likely brewing in Asia. We've had SARS in 2002, SARS-2, COVID-19 in 2019, and we know these viruses are jumping from bats to people thousands of times a year, but there's still more. We know that we have a big problem with mosquito-transmitted viruses all along the Gulf Coast, where I am here in Texas. So we're expecting dengue and possibly Zika virus coming back, or a Puche virus, maybe even yellow fever. And there's more. Then we have all this sharp rise in vaccine preventable diseases going up because of, in part, the anti-vaccine activism that's so prominent right now. We have a 5-fold rise in pertussis cases, whooping cough over the last year, 15 measles outbreaks this year. We've got polio that's been in the wastewater in New York State. All that's going to come crashing down on January 21st on the Trump administration. We need a really, really good team to be able to handle this.
Vaccine-driven viral evolution, or the common term, leaky vaccine. That's the most important point. More important than the fact that the globalists admitted they'd use these viruses to take full control. Even more important than them being caught in all these previous lies and being total frauds, their own documents coming out, not just here, but around the world, health agencies coordinating to hype, fear, lie to the public, not treat people sick from other viruses so they die, to add to those death numbers. That's all key. But most important is the fact that you give people, during the big virus season, during winter, a bunch of experimental shots. It is on record that it causes not just the virus they're targeting, but many other coronaviruses, flu viruses, you name it, to be put under pressure in the body. And then that causes these dangerous mutations, which they're telling us is about to happen and make it jump into humans even easier. So why would you then have 10 companies in the U.S., dozens around the world, so many I can't even count them all coming out with their own bird flu shots, but having no idea what it's about to mutate into unless they already have it on the shelf at these bioweapon labs like EcoHealth Alliance and others, so that when the new variant shows up, don't worry, they've already got the so-called vaccine on the shelf. This is really important information. We've got scientists, doctors, researchers coming on today and throughout the week on my show. Follow us at Real Alex Jones as we break this down. But it's really important to attack the credibility of these people and to point out the science. Science is about asking questions, not about Fauci saying, I am the science. Don't ask questions. This is a globalist eugenics death cult led by Bill Gates and Klaus Schwab that wants to depopulate the earth and wants full control over our bodies. This is an existential threat to everyone, and these criminals must go down before they release the next manufactured virus.
What should be happening in the Biden administration right now that isn't going on?
Yeah, there are two main things that they should be doing in the days that they have left. The first is to get testing out there. I feel like we should have learned our lesson from COVID that just because we aren't testing, it doesn't mean that the virus isn't there. It just means that we aren't looking for it. We should be having rapid tests, home tests available to all farm workers, to their families, for the clinicians taking care of them, so that we aren't waiting for public labs and CDC labs to tell us what's bird flu or not. And the second very important thing is, this is not like the beginning of COVID where we were dealing with a new virus, we didn't have a vaccine. There actually is a vaccine developed already against H5N1. The Biden administration has contracted with manufacturers to make almost 5 million doses of the vaccine. However, they have not asked the FDA to authorize the vaccine. There's research done on it. They could get this authorized now and also get the vaccine out and to farm workers and to vulnerable people. I think that's the right approach, because we don't know what the Trump administration is going to be doing around bird flu. If they have people coming in with anti-vaccine stances, could they hold up vaccine authorization? If they don't want to know how much bird flu is out there, could they withhold testing? I mean, that's a possibility.
To me, The spring and the summer, where we had all of the dairy cattle to farm worker exposure, we didn't have human flu circulating. So now we're entering a much more dangerous period, yet we're still not testing. And we should be providing tests free of charge to dairy farm workers so they can test anonymously weekly, because they'll want to know if they have both cases of potential flus co-circulating in their own body to protect their families. People are very smart. I find the American public to be incredibly smart. If you tell them the risk and you give them the tools, they will utilize them to protect themselves and their family.
We told you that the globalists were going to launch a new pandemic, a new psychological warfare operation, a new hysteria. President Trump needs to get out ahead of this right now. He needs to expose these frauds. It is meant to kill the economy again. It is meant to take control of not just America's political policies, but the world's. This is the big move. Do you want the mask back on the kids? Do you want the lockdowns? Do you want them to have all these COVID centers around the world, not just filled with people they claim failed a PCR test, but political dissidents? That's the plan. Even Schmidt, the head of Alphabet, of Google, has come out and said he wants NATO and the UN to censor and arrest people during the next pandemic. He said that a few months ago at Stanford. They are gearing up. They are making their move. This is the big assault. This is their plan to derail the Great Awakening and continue their Great Reset. President Trump must come out and speak out against this now. But regardless of what he does, we have to come out and speak out about it right now and expose these criminals. Remember the horses running over people in Australia, Germany, Canada, who were out protesting the lockdowns. Remember all the tyranny. Remember the children cheering when they finally took the mask off. Remember the third world collapsing and tens of millions starving to death, not from the virus, but from the lockdowns from the virus. This is global government trying to take over our lives with the fear of a virus. Then their response are these poison shots that destroy our immune systems. This is globalist tyranny. This is phase 2 of their genocide. And we, the people in the information war with the truth, must rally with the facts and stop them now. It's us or them.
Should there be a federal mask mandate?
Yeah, at this point, there absolutely should be that mandate, because we know that if all of us wear masks, we reduce the chance of transmitting or acquiring COVID-19 by 5 times. There is a real danger when we politicize science. That public trust is broken when we are politicizing science instead of following scientific process. My kids are not eligible to be vaccinated. It's not that I don't want them to be vaccinated, it's that they can't be. And I do really worry. I mean, I have an almost 4-year-old and a 1-year-old. I cannot wait until they're eligible to receive the vaccine. I think until then, mask wearing for kids, especially if we are living in high transmission areas, is still going to be important. And what we really need to do at this point is to make vaccination the easy choice. It needs to be hard for people to remain unvaccinated. I mean, we wouldn't imagine bringing together 20, 30 unvaccinated adults, putting them in a single room together the entire day and have them not wear masks. Why would we say that that's okay for our children? Travel and having the right to travel interstate, it's not a constitutional right as far as I know to board a plane. And so saying that if you want to stay unvaccinated, that's your choice. But if you want to travel, you better go get that vaccine. I agree that masks are a very powerful layer of protection, but it's one layer. And if we have so many other layers that are present, masking may be one that could go away. But we are nowhere near that yet. And I think what we really need to do is get the vaccines authorized for children as soon as that's possible. There is no evidence whatsoever for any other vaccine causing long-term consequences. We really should be a lot more worried about the virus and the short-term as well as long-term consequences on our children as opposed to the vaccine. Make sure that you're wearing a mask, even though it's outdoors. If there are lots of people packed around you, wearing a 3-ply surgical mask. Don't wear a cloth mask. Cloth masks are little more than facial decorations. There actually is a harm that we should be discussing of children continuing to mask. We should also be intellectually honest and say that masking has had a cost, especially for the youngest learners, so the risk-benefit calculation has really changed. I'm the mom of 2 little kids under 5. I can't wait until they are vaccinated. But I would wait until we find that the vaccines are safe and effective. And I'm not sure that we can say that at the moment because we just don't have the data. But I also think that other parents would want to wait until we know that 3 doses will produce the intended effect. I'm not saying, I don't think anyone really is saying that no one should ever wear masks, but rather that the responsibility should shift from a government mandate imposed from the state or the local district of the school. Rather, it should shift to an individual responsibility by the family.
The Oscar winners give a press conference and how to buy a sailboat.
I guess my feeling at this point in time is maybe we need to be completely a little bit more scary for the public.
Especially with the Delta variant, which is the hardiest and most contagious variant we've seen to date. We need all the protection that we can get. That's why the vaccines are so effective.
This is a pandemic of the unvaccinated.
We've got to get them vaccinated, and hopefully they will do it willingly.
I think we really need to make it clear that there are privileges associated with being an American.
We have to be more blunt. We have to be more forceful.
If you do not want to get vaccinated, you can work from home. You can homeschool your children. You can shop online. So where is this coming from? People saying, I'm now being forced to be vaccinated.
If you want to travel, you better go get that vaccine.
You should be wearing masks even when you are vaccinated if you are indoors.
If you wish to have these privileges, you need to get vaccinated.
We have to say something coming out, you don't get vaccinated, you're going to die. I mean, let's just be really blunt to these people.